Okay, quick question. When you think about the law in the Old Testament, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's this picture of harsh, impossible rules, a super rigid system for trying to earn God's favor. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the law given at Mount Sinai was actually built on something else entirely? Let's dig in.
So, was the Old Testament law really just some brutal test to see if Israel could earn God's favor? That's the big question we're tackling. You've probably heard the idea that in the Old Testament, you obey to get God's love, but in the New Testament, you're loved so you obey. Well, it turns out the text of Exodus itself tells a very, very different story. And that story kicks off with this absolutely crucial principle. Redemption happened before the rules were ever given. And listen, this isn't just a minor detail, it is the entire foundation for everything that's about to happen at Mount Sinai. Now, check this out. This is God's opening statement to Israel at the mountain. This is Exodus 19, verse 4. Before a single command is given, he doesn't start with, okay, here's what you have to do for me. No, he says, look at what I have already done for you. I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. It's a statement of pure, accomplished grace. So, the sequence here is everything. Grace came first. The law was given to a people who were already redeemed. Think about it. They weren't standing at the base of that mountain trying to earn their freedom. They were there because they were already free. The law wasn't a ladder they had to climb. It was a roadmap for people who were already free. And this next part just brilliantly illustrates how God saw them. Right in that opening speech, he calls them his Segura. Now, this is a pretty rare Hebrew word, and its meaning is just powerful. It was a term ancient kings used to describe their most valued vassals, their own private, treasured property. So God isn't looking at Israel like a bunch of employees on probation. He's claiming them as his own treasured possession. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. What about the big if? This is where a lot of people get stuck. In Exodus 19:5, God says, if you obey me fully. I mean, that sounds pretty conditional, doesn't it? It feels like it puts the ball right back in Israel's court. So let's take a closer look at how that if actually works. So on this slide, you can see that two ways to understand that if clause. The common misconception is that it's merit-based. If you obey, then you will earn your status as my people. But as Old Testament scholar Walter Kaiser has pointed out, the grammar suggests something totally different. It's not a condition of earning, it's a condition of result. The meaning is much closer to, since you are already my people, if you obey, the result will be that you get to experience the full blessings of the relationship you already have. And Kaiser just nails it here. Obedience wasn't a condition for their salvation or their election. They already had that. It was a condition for their role. It was about how fully they would live out their unique calling to be this kingdom of priests, this holy nation. It's about the depth of the relationship, not about earning it in the first place. All right, now for a really fascinating twist. The laws that were given at Sinai, they weren't just created in a historical vacuum. God was actually communicating with his people using legal formats they would have already recognized. And this brings us to a pretty surprising picture of the law's ancient roots. I mean, just look at this timeline. You've got the Code of Or-Namu, the laws of Ishona, the super famous Code of Hammurabi. All of these major law codes from the ancient Near East existed for centuries before Moses ever went up that mountain. A legal culture was already well established. And the parallels can be, well, they're kind of shocking. Just look at this example. On the left, you've got a law from Ishona, written around 1990 BC. On the right, a law from Exodus. Both deal with the exact same weirdly specific scenario. One ox goring another, and they lay out the exact same solution. Sell the live ox and split the money and the dead animal. It is nearly identical. So what does this mean? It doesn't mean the Bible just copied other laws. Of course not. It means God, in his wisdom, spoke to his people in a language they could actually understand. He used the common legal formats and cultural traditions of their day to reveal his unique will for them. He literally met them where they were. So, let's recap. We've got redemption before rules, a grace-based if, and a familiar legal format. How does this all tie together? Well, what it reveals is this beautiful, unbroken thread of grace that runs from the Old Testament right into the New. Theologian J.A. Moyer provides this really elegant summary of the pattern. He calls it a cycle of grace, law, and grace. First, grace. God redeems his people. Second, law. He gives them a pattern for how to live as his redeemed people. And third, more grace. He provides the whole sacrificial system as a way to maintain that relationship even when they mess up. It's this beautiful, self-contained system that's founded on and sustained by grace. And now, let's circle back to that special word we learned earlier, segura, God's treasured possession. We see it in Exodus, it's reaffirmed in Deuteronomy, but then, and this is so cool, hundreds of years later, when the New Testament writers want to describe the church, what word do they reach for? Yup, in both Titus and 1 Peter, they use the Greek translation of that exact same Hebrew word. The church is called God's segura, his treasured possession. The language of grace is completely unbroken. So, the bottom line is this. The law was never, ever a ladder for people to try and climb up to God. It was a divinely given pattern of life, a gift, for those who had already been brought near to him by an incredible act of grace. I mean, that's a complete reframing of how we often see the Old Testament, isn't it?
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If the law, in its original context, was a gift of guidance for a people who were already loved and redeemed, well, how does that change our view of rules, obligations, and obedience in our own lives today? What if they're not burdens to be endured, but patterns for a life that we've already been given?